Hello, welcome to the tutorial on RPGenius's TileMapper. When you first click the program, you'll notice this little splash screen comes up for new, saved, or cancel. In this case, we're going to create a new item, so click New. The two windows that open are the toolbox and the work area. First thing we want to do is give it a background. There are two options for backgrounds. One is the solid background. There are several default solid backgrounds, something as simple as a parchment background for your map, or as complex as a jungle background. On top of that, every map you create in this program can become a background for later maps. In this case, we're going to choose the other option of tiled background. In order to do that, the first thing we have to do is choose a tile. We're going to choose a tile set. In this case, we're going to go outdoor and ground. We're going to click through the tiles until we find the one we want, and I like that one right there. And we're going to choose background, tiled background. That creates the entire background out of that one tile. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a building. In this case, I'm going to use the wood building. And I'm going to start with floors. I want to define the area that is going to be the building. And I think I'm going to use the darker floor. We're going to create a front room. And a back room. That gives us a rough floor plan. Now we need to add walls. First wall that comes up is the side wall. So you get the idea. We want to put walls on that side of the building. Now we've got a corner, and that corner looks like it should go in that spot right there. Bottom walls. That corner. Side walls. Upper left corners. And top walls. And we're going to separate these two rooms, but I'm going to leave an opening right there. Let's give that corner a spot there. Now, the next thing I need is shadow on the grass. So we're going to go back to our outdoor tiles and our ground where we found that one. And there we have a shadowed of that one. And it's very simple. Let's just click the tiles underneath it. To do a side shadow, let's click rotate left. We're going to use that one in the corner. And that one in that corner. That gives us a nice little shadowed area. Oh, we almost forgot. Let's put that there. rotate left, and we have a shadow on that wall as well. Alright, that gives us our building. Now let's add some furniture. We'll go back to wood building. And now not all the furniture is listed here, and some of it is listed in the dungeon section as well. You might later choose to rearrange where your tiles are at, putting all the furniture from wood buildings to dungeon all in one particular tile set. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But for now, we're going to do this. I'm going to find a couch. Now I could just create the floating object like this and put it in here, and that would be fine. But I want to make it look a little bit better, so I'm going to add some shadows. Now the shadows are very light, so it usually takes 4 to 5 shadows to get to the actual darkness you probably will want. And then by dragging them down here and offsetting them a little bit around where you want it to be, you can create a nice faded shadow effect. And we click on the couch again and bring it to the top, and you can see how it's shadowed. We'll do that again with this little desk. This time I'm going to do the shadows first. And position them where I want them. Then create the floating object and drag it into place. You can make this building furnished as elaborately as you wish, or as sparsely as you wish. Now we're going to add a door. We've got a large double door if you want. Nice little fireplace there too. I don't know why. Oh, that's what that is. That's not a fireplace. It's a door with steps. Actually, I think I'm going to use that one. And I'm going to rotate it twice to put the handles on the outside. Create a floating object. And I'm going to drag that down here. Also, you notice in the wall section there were some windows. You could make a separate button for windows, and again I'll show you how to do that here later, and drag these two tiles to those if you wish, and it would kind of make sense. We'll create a floating object to that. I'm going to put a window right there. Okay, we have our basic building. Now we need to landscape it a little bit. We're going to go back to outdoor, and we're going to go to vegetation, and oh, I like this tree right here. I'm going to create shadows for it, put them where I want them. And then create a floating object, and we have a tree. Have all kinds of trees. There's a nice little palm tree. Let's do that. Floating object, and we have a palm tree. There are several other options. We have landmarks, which would give you some very simple things that could be added if you choose. There's structures, entire buildings already created. Paths, if you wanted to put a path on there. Rocks. We wanted a large rock there. And the rocks, there's several different rocks can be combined to make an entire mountain range if you choose. Other notable tools would be the fit toolbox to top, pin pull toolbox to top, which if you click that, it will always be on top, so you can't lose it underneath the other windows. Sometimes that's usable. Fit to a single tile. What that does is it would allow you to take this right here, for example, which is a large tile. If you click that, it brings it down to a tiny little tile. Not always usable, but it has its moments. The grid button. The grid button brings your grid to the top. You'll notice as we put the rock here and the trees down and the furniture, it went on top of the grid. If you click the grid button, it brings the grid back on top. Then any object you want on top of the grid, you can just click it again and it brings it to the top. That comes in very handy if you're using, for example, the outdoor sections that are larger, that don't have a grid drawn on top of it. You can put them down and throw the grid on top of it. Next thing we're going to cover is text. Text is an important thing to all maps. It's going to use your system fonts. So anything you have on your system should be available. Some fonts, you'll notice, only have a few sizes. Other fonts have a lot, and even more and more. That's getting into the difference between true type and non-true type fonts, and it's really more than the scope of this tutorial. Right now I'm going to choose this simple font and I'm going to make it big. Let's make it a full 100. I'm going to do it in black, bold. Of course you can do it italics and underlined as well, and we're going to hit add text, and I'm just going to write my map. And we get a simple black my map. Now let's change the color a little bit, maybe to a bright red, and do the same thing. And there we have a way of making text. Now also I want to point out that if you create something, a floating object for example, that you don't want, you can either hold the shift button down and click it to make it disappear, or you can just drag it off the screen. Either one, it disappears. Dragging it off the screen will actually make your file size of your saved file larger in the end, so clicking it is actually the better way to do it. But if you're in a hurry and you're not worried about file size, you can just drag it off. It won't affect the file size of an exported JPEG image, but it will affect the file size of your saved image, your saved map area. Another important thing to note is the combine tool. It's a very small map area. You might want a bigger map. What you do is you make your map in sections, and you use the combine tool to connect them together. If you want to connect them side by side, you can load them there and there and hit combine, and it'll combine the maps. If you want one above the other, use one above the other. If you want to do 4 at a time, you can do 4 at a time. Once the image is combined, it can again be added and combined further, so you can make the map as large as you want. Now that we've covered the basics of operation of the program itself, I want to talk about how to modify the program to your use. If you go to the directory in which you have the program loaded, you'll see several files. In this case we have more files than just what this program has because I've got several programs installed in this directory. The important one you'll have is the tiles and also the backgrounds. Your backgrounds is where, when you hit the background solid feature, that's where it draws its pictures from. So any JPEG you want to add as a background, you can add there and it becomes a background for later use. The tiles is all the other tiles you see. Now this is completely modifiable. You'll notice what's listed here in the file is what's listed here. If I add a folder and name it something else, for example, sewer system, the next time I load this program, that file will show up here and you can choose the sewer system. Inside of each of these files, you'll notice if you choose that tile set, all these buttons match up to the files. There are room for 10 files. If you add an 11th, it's not going to show up. So always try to keep the number of files in your tile sets 10 or less. To add a new button, all you have to do is go to the file, and let's say we'll go to Cave here and add monsters. Now the next time I go to Cave, you have a button for monsters, and anything that's in that monster file would show up as tiles when clicking through the previous and next buttons. As far as making your own tiles, it's very simple. JPEG, GIF, or PNG files are all acceptable. If you're going to do floating objects, I recommend using either GIF format or PNG so you can have an invisible background. Most of these images have been pulled from the internet in one way or another, and you feel free to pull as many more as you wish. That's how you modify your buttons and your tiles. I'm anxious to see some of the creations other people can make with tiles. If you have any questions on how to use this program, feel free to contact us on the RPGenius Etsy page. Thank you very much for taking the time to see this tutorial, and I hope you have a lovely time making lots of new maps.